All right, Personal Finance 101. This video is your financial base camp, and everything we cover later sits on top of these principles. By the end of this video, you'll have the building blocks for your financial freedom, and we'll be covering budgeting, emergency fund, and debt payoff. Welcome back to the Cash Flow Explorer program, and we're starting here at level 1 because I don't want you to try to summit the mountain in flip-flops. So we got to make sure you have your base ready and your gear before we move into more advanced topics. All right, let's get into budgeting. There is so much information online about budgeting, and I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with this term, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the budget. Instead, I'll let Dave Ramsey take it away because he is the king of budgeting, and he says it best: tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. That line has always stuck with me. Budgeting is not a fun thing to talk about, but there are a ton of good principles here at play, and I don't want to make Dave Ramsey mad and threaten you that you have to eat rice and beans the rest of your life, so we have to start with the budget as your foundation. When I was living in my van in California, right outside of the Google office, my monthly expenses were almost nothing. I spent a couple $100s a month. It was for insurance, and I had a Planet Fitness membership so I could shower anywhere on the road, and a phone bill. That was pretty much it. But I still sat down every month and I gave every dollar that I was earning a job. I knew exactly where everything was going, and not because I had to, I really didn't have many expenses, but I was learning how to pay attention to where my money was going, and I wanted to put as much of it as possible into my investments. And that is what a zero-based budget does. You take your total monthly income, so this is everything coming in from your paycheck or other sources, and then you give every dollar an assignment before the month starts. You can only spend or save your money. They fall into that 2 buckets. So by the time that you're done with all of your income, minus your spend and your save, everything should equal 0. Not because you spent everything, but because every dollar is accounted for. You put it into savings, investing, debt payoff, or groceries. Every category has a number associated with it. And to keep it going with the bald guy wisdom, Kevin O'Leary says that money is my military, each dollar a soldier. So we want to give every dollar a job. Think of your paycheck as a faucet that is filling up a bucket. And a zero-based budget seals the holes, so we don't have money just leaking out without us knowing. And the goal of the zero-based budget is simple. We want to spend less than you make, so live within your means, and then make sure that the extra is working for you. To get started with your zero-based budget, write down all of the income that is going in. After that, we want to list every expense. So there's 2 different types of expenses. We have fixed expenses and variable expenses. Fixed expenses are the same every month. So this is what you're on the hook to always pay. It includes things like your mortgage and rent, car payment, other loan payments like student loans or credit cards, your insurance, utilities, phone bill, and gym, to name a couple. And then your variable expenses are the ones that change month to month. So that's things like groceries, restaurants, transportation, shopping, fun and entertainment. All that stuff goes into the variable bucket. And within the save bucket, we have savings and investing. You have short-term savings. This is for a trip coming up or maybe a new car. You also have an emergency fund as part of your savings. I also put extra debt payments in this category. So you're not forced to make these debt payments, but you're using part of your savings to pay off your debt and get you to freedom faster. The spend and expenses category has a little bit of a negative connotation. So I wanted to make sure that if you're putting money toward extra debt payoff, that is a very good thing. And to keep investments simple for now, I'll just write down your retirement accounts, things like your 401k and Roth IRA. So this is where all of your monthly income goes. It is either spent or it is saved. You can start your zero-based budget on the back of a napkin. So you just write down your income, your expenses, and what you're saving, and you want to make sure that it nets out to 0. So give every dollar a job. The next level is a spreadsheet where you can keep track of these things. I used a spreadsheet for a couple of years, and then I moved to a tool that tracks it automatically for us. For that tool, I personally recommend Monarch Money. I think I've been using it for 4 years now, and it makes things super easy. It connects to all of our bank accounts and credit cards and helps categorize our spending. So it makes it easy to see where our money is going instead of wondering where it went. So just like the budget here, this is a simplified version with all of your different line items. You have your same line items on the left-hand side. You have your total income and then your total expenses. So some of it goes to your fixed expenses and then other goes to your variable expenses. Just want to make sure we write them all out. So double check your math and make sure that you allocate your income to either the spend or savings bucket and give every dollar a job. But at the end of the day, the best budget is the one that you will actually use. So start simple and adjust from there. You can always use a fancier tool later, but keep it simple and easy to follow. To wrap us up here on the zero-based budget, we want to start by writing down your total monthly income from all sources, and then your spend bucket includes your monthly fixed expenses that are always the same. And then for your variable expenses, you're going to estimate what you spend in each of those categories every month. Then for the savings side, we want to write down what our monthly savings will be, as well as the monthly amount that we're putting into investments. All right, that's it for the zero-based budget. If you want more information, there's tons of information on budgets online. This is all I'm going to get into. Next, let's talk about the emergency fund. The thing about a budget is that it plans for the expected, but life only delivers the unexpected. And no matter how well you build your budget, something will happen that will break it. And a perfect example is I used to have a truck that kind of just sat in our driveway, and the wires of my truck got chewed through by squirrels twice. Not once, but twice. And both times the repairs were very costly and very inconvenient to try to get this car to the shop. But thankfully, since we have an emergency fund, we were able to pay for it, and it was more annoying instead of being a financial setback that takes us months to recover from. The emergency fund exists so that the doesn't derail your whole investing plan. Taking the time to set up an emergency fund sounds slow, but it then allows you to aggressively pursue financial freedom because you have that safety net. So the emergency fund, you can put money in there as part of your savings bucket of your zero-based budget. And your emergency fund is a buffer. It is cash that is just sitting in a high-yield savings account. So it is liquid, accessible, and it is earning interest while it waits. And it exists for one purpose of absorbing the financial hits without wrecking your budget or forcing you to sell your investments. I never want you to have to sell investments for a short-term expense, so that's why this is here. The target for your emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses. So if your monthly expenses are $4,000, you're aiming for somewhere between $12,000 and $24,000 in your emergency fund. You may want more or less money in your emergency fund, but it gives you financial breathing room. If you're wondering where to start, I recommend just starting with 3 months, and you can see how that feels. And sometimes people can't picture an emergency fund, like what it actually is. So let's give you a fictional example from Ally Bank, let's say. A lot of times these financial concepts are hard to actually visualize, so I wanted to give you a little fictional example of what it could look like in something like Ally Bank. I don't personally use Ally, but I've heard really good things from people that you can create buckets to save really easily. So within your bank account, you're going to have 2 different accounts. The one that you're probably used to is your checking account, and that's where all your money goes to. That gets a 0.01% annual yield on average. For the emergency fund, we're actually going to have a second account at your same bank. And ideally, we're looking for something that has between 3 and 4% annual interest. So this is where your emergency fund will sit, and it'll earn interest every month. We want to use a high yield savings account because it is not locked up and you can still pull the money out at any time, but you're actually earning real interest on it. We do not want to put your emergency fund in the stock market where it could drop 20% in a week and then you sell at a loss. This money is meant to just sit there and be ready. To recap on how we set this up, we're going to write down your monthly spend, which you should already have from your zero-based budget, multiply it by 3 to start, open a new high-yield savings account that has at least 3% annual interest. If your current bank doesn't offer this, I would recommend just switching banks. There are plenty of banks out there that will give you a better rate, and it takes no more than 30 minutes. After that, you can set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your savings account so that every month you're going to be moving more money into your emergency fund. This should be part of your allocation within your zero-based budget. And lastly, I would say don't overdo how much you put in an emergency fund because this is not an investment account. We want as much of your money working for you as possible. The emergency fund is protection, not for performance. But how much you need will depend on your situation. If you're single, if you have a stable job, if you have lower monthly expenses, 3 months is probably fine, but if you have a family or lumpier income or higher monthly expenses, you may want closer to 6 months of expenses. Just figure out how much cash you need in there to sleep well at night, and that's your number. All right, now let's get into debt payoff. This was the day that Amy actually finished paying off the rest of her student loans. She started with about $30,000 in student loans, and we made a plan to pay that off in roughly 3 to 4 years. When we didn't have to make student loan payments anymore, that effect was immediate. The money that was going to the debt could now be invested and grow for our future instead. And the thing that is so frustrating about debt is that a huge chunk of our zero-based budget is allocated toward debt payments every month. So things like your mortgage, car payment, other loan payments, and then extra debt payoff is a huge amount of what we bring in every month. Debt is one of those things in society that we're just comfortable living with, but it's a huge part of our budgets that really holds us back. But let's think about this model. When you have money invested, let's say in the stock market, it gets an average return of 7 to 8% a year. So that means your money is growing for you 8% every year. Now let's compare that to a credit card with 22% APY. You may say, Michael, 22% is crazy. Well, that's pretty normal from consumer credit cards. A lot of these interest rates are 20% and higher. So when we think about that 22%, is actually growing against us. So in the wrong direction. Your investments are growing at 8%, but your debt is growing negatively at 22%. So it is a huge enemy to our financial progress. And that is why debt payoff is so important, especially high interest debt that is greater than 6% a year, because we want to stop that negative compounding as quickly as possible. Your investments can grow 7 to 8% a year, but your debt is guaranteed to grow at 6% or more a year. So what that means is if you pay off your debt, you get a guaranteed 6% rate of return, and then you can invest that money moving forward. So we want to make sure we eliminate debt so that you can then invest. And when you slowly get rid of these debt payments, you're going to have a lot more flexibility in your budget and your life. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that people approach debt payoff. The first is the debt snowball, where you write out your balances from smallest to largest. So let's say your credit card is $2,000 and your mortgage is up to $350,000. This method is all about your psychology and getting some good emotional wins. So you can pay off your credit card quicker and then your car loan and your student loan, and it allows you to build momentum. That's why it's called the snowball that moves down the hill. On the other side of things, you have the debt avalanche, and that is where we write out your interest rates from highest to lowest. In this method, you pay off the balance that has the highest interest rate first. In both methods, we're going to be attacking one debt at a time and then paying the minimum debt payment on all others. So that way we focus all of our energy into wiping one out. If you want to start with the debt snowball to get some quick wins, that's okay, but I will say that the debt avalanche is mathematically superior for you to build wealth. We want to get high interest debt gone as quickly as possible. And a quick note on your mortgage, that is typically a very large balance and your home value is going to be going up over time. So you can make some extra payments to your mortgage to lower the amount of interest you'll pay over the course of the whole loan. But in general, I like to pay close to the minimum on my mortgage and then supercharge as much of my investments as possible. We want to attack all other types of debts and especially consumer debt, but the mortgage is a little bit different. All right, to recap the steps for debt payoff, we want to write down all of your debt balances. So find your credit card balance, student loans, car loans, mortgage, anything that you have, write them down, and then order them by highest to lowest annual interest. And a special note here, number 3, if you have any debt with over 20% annual interest, you can roll that into a personal loan and you might get down to like 15%, which will save you some money. And once you have everything written out, pay off the highest interest debt with that savings bucket. And pay it off aggressively if it's over 6% a year. For all of your other debts, make the minimum payment for now as you attack one at a time. And then when debt is paid outside of your mortgage, we want to use those new savings from your zero-based budget to invest instead. You can make some extra payments on your mortgage, but you need to start investing for your future. And if at all possible, please avoid new consumer debt. Keep your freedom. When you sign up for new debt or buy a new car, you're locking yourself into a contract to be paying that for the next couple of years. All right, let's jump into the takeaways for this video. So for budgeting in a zero-based budget, every dollar gets a job. Remember, they're your soldiers to work for your freedom. And you can only spend or save your income. When it comes to your emergency fund, expect the unexpected and keep 3 to 6 months of expenses in your high yield savings account. And lastly, for paying off debt, it gives you financial breathing room. And I recommend using the avalanche method to attack one at a time. This basically covers all of the personal finance 101 information that you need to know. But just by writing down your income, your expenses, and your savings and giving those dollars a job, you're going to be so much further ahead by actually knowing where your money is going. For your action items, I highly recommend you create a zero-based budget. You open up that new emergency fund and a high-yield savings account and you start funding it. And then for debt payoff, start with your plan and write out all your balances. Well, there you have it. These are the building blocks for your financial freedom. Coming up next is building wealth for two. Align with your partner to avoid tension and build wealth. Every video also has an engagement question online at trailmixwealth.com, so you can write in your answer and also see what other people wrote. There are also polls with live data, so you can see other people who are going through the course with you. All right, I'll see you in the next one.